My beloved child. There is something quietly shifting, not around you, but within the space where your memories and your intuition meet. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't ask for attention. Yet somehow, you've already begun to feel it, haven't you? A strange realization has been circling you lately, like a thought that almost lands, but slips away just before you can fully understand it. And the more you try to ignore it, the more it returns, softly, patiently, waiting. Because what was never spoken, was never truly hidden. Pause for a moment, and think back to the very beginning. Not the obvious moments, the smiles, the conversations, the visible connection. No, go deeper than that. There were seconds, small and almost invisible, where something felt unfinished. A look that lasted a little longer than it should have. A sentence that ended too early. A silence that felt like it was carrying more than words ever could. At the time, it didn't make sense. You may have brushed it off, told yourself it was nothing. But now, something inside you is starting to revisit those moments, piece by piece, as if a hidden layer is finally being revealed. And here's what makes this even more unusual. You didn't consciously decide to remember. It's happening on its own. Why now? Why these memories? Why this sudden feeling that something important was left unsaid? There's a reason your awareness is being drawn back there. Not to confuse you, but to show you something that your heart recognized long before your mind could explain it. Because from the very beginning, your soulmate felt something they couldn't fully express. Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't yet understand it themselves. Let that settle for a second. Imagine holding a feeling so real, so undeniable, but not having the clarity to name it. Not having the courage to speak it. Not even knowing where it would lead. That's the space they were in. And somehow, you felt it. Not logically, but emotionally. That quiet tension, that unspoken depth, that sense that there was more beneath the surface. It wasn't imagined. It wasn't random. It was real. But here's where it becomes even more meaningful. They thought they had time. Time to figure it out. Time to say what they couldn't say in the moment. Time to come back and complete what felt incomplete. But time doesn't always move the way people expect. And sometimes, silence stretches longer than it should. Have you ever noticed how certain memories don't fade, even when everything else does? There's a reason for that. Because those moments weren't ordinary. They carried energy. Intention. Emotion that was never fully released. And now, that energy is finding its way back to you. Not to overwhelm you, but to awaken something. Something that was always there. You may have started noticing it in subtle ways. A sudden thought about them when you're not even trying to think. A feeling that appears out of nowhere, without any clear trigger. A sense that something is about to be understood, but hasn't fully arrived yet. This is not coincidence. This is alignment beginning to unfold. But don't rush it. Don't try to force meaning too quickly. Because what's coming isn't meant to be rushed. It's meant to be realized, naturally, almost as if it reveals itself when you're not even looking for it. And here's something you might not have considered before. What if the things they never said were actually being communicated in a different way? Not through words, but through presence. Through the way they looked at you when they thought you weren't noticing. Through the way their energy shifted around you, even in silence. Through the moments where everything felt calm, but somehow deeper than calm. You weren't imagining that. You were feeling something real, something incomplete. Something waiting. And now, that waiting is beginning to end. But not in the way you might expect. Because clarity doesn't always arrive as a loud answer. Sometimes, it arrives as a quiet understanding that suddenly makes everything make sense. You're getting closer to that moment. Closer than you think. But here's the part that most people miss. When something begins to make sense, it often brings both clarity and emotion. You may feel a mix of understanding and questioning at the same time. You may feel like you're finally seeing something clearly, but also wondering why it took so long. And that's okay. Because this isn't about regret. It's about recognition. Recognition of what was always there, just waiting for the right moment to be seen. So don't push this feeling away. Don't distract yourself from it. Sit with it, just for a moment longer. Because something important is waiting for you. Not somewhere far away. But within the very thing you're beginning to understand. And as this realization continues to unfold, you'll start noticing something even more unexpected. The way you see them is changing. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But subtly, like a lens being adjusted. You're not just remembering who they were. You're starting to understand why they were the way they were. And that changes everything. Because once you see that, you can never unsee it. And that's where the next part begins. There's a moment, so quiet you almost miss it. Where understanding stops being a thought and becomes a feeling. And that's exactly where you are now. Not fully there, not completely unaware either. Just standing in between, where things begin to click, but not all at once. It's strange, isn't it? How something that once felt confusing, is now starting to feel intentional. Almost as if nothing was accidental. Almost as if every pause, every silence, every unfinished moment, was carrying a meaning that simply wasn't ready to be seen yet. And now, without warning, it's opening. But let me ask you something. Have you noticed how your emotions around them are changing, without you trying to change them? You're not reacting the same way anymore. You're not questioning the same things anymore. It's not that the past disappeared. It's that your perspective is evolving. And when perspective shifts, hidden truths begin to rise. Because what your soulmate never said, wasn't empty. It was full. Full of feelings they didn't know how to hold. Full of thoughts they couldn't organize into words. Full of a connection that felt bigger than what they were ready for at that time. And here's the part that quietly changes everything. They didn't walk away from what they felt. They paused in front of it. There's a difference. A big one. Walking away means letting go. But pausing means something is still there, waiting. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for courage. Waiting for the moment when confusion turns into certainty. And that moment is closer than it has ever been. You might not see it clearly yet, but you can feel the shift. It's subtle. It's gentle. But it's real. Something inside them has been rearranging. Without noise. Without announcement. Just slowly aligning. And somehow, you're feeling it too. That unexplained pull. That calm curiosity. That quiet knowing that something is not finished. This is where most people misunderstand what's happening. They think silence means absence. But sometimes, silence is preparation. Preparation for words that need to be said the right way. Preparation for a truth that needs to be understood fully before it's expressed. Because when something truly matters, it doesn't rush. It waits until it can be real. And that's what you're beginning to witness now. Not the surface, but the depth behind it. Think about this. Why do certain memories return with a different feeling than before? Why do moments that once confused you, now feel almost clear? Why does your heart feel calmer, even though answers haven't fully arrived yet? Because something is connecting. Something is aligning. Not outside, but within both of you. And here's where it becomes even more powerful. The version of you who experienced those early moments is not the same version of you who is understanding them now. You've grown. You've shifted. You've become more aware. And because of that, you're now able to see what you couldn't see before. The hesitation in their energy. The depth in their silence. The truth hidden in what they didn't say. And suddenly, it doesn't feel confusing anymore. It feels unfinished. There's a quiet difference between something ending and something pausing. And deep down, you're starting to realize which one this was. But don't rush to conclusions. Because what's unfolding is not just about them. It's also about you. About what you're now ready to understand. About what your heart is finally open to receiving. And this part, this exact moment, is delicate. Because clarity is arriving, but it's still forming. Like a message that hasn't fully been spoken, yet is already understood. You may even start noticing small signs. Not loud ones. Not obvious ones. But subtle shifts. A thought that feels more certain than before. A memory that suddenly makes sense. A feeling that no longer questions itself. These are not coincidences. They are pieces. Pieces of something that is slowly becoming whole. But here's the deeper truth. What your soulmate never said, wasn't meant to stay hidden forever. It was meant to be realized, at the right time. And timing has a way of revealing things only when both hearts are ready to understand them. You are stepping into that readiness now. Even if it doesn't feel complete yet. Even if questions still linger. Because sometimes, understanding doesn't arrive as an answer. Sometimes, it arrives as a calm certainty that quietly replaces doubt. And once that certainty begins to settle, everything starts to shift. The way you feel. The way you remember. The way you see what once felt unclear. It all begins to change. And just when you think you're starting to understand it, something even deeper begins to surface. A realization that goes beyond the past. Beyond the silence. Beyond what was said, and what wasn't. Because what's coming next is not just about understanding them. It's about discovering something unexpected. Something that was quietly forming this entire time, waiting for this exact moment to reveal itself. And then, without warning, a deeper layer begins to unfold. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But in a way that feels almost inevitable. Like something that was always meant to reach you, just not until now. Because what you're starting to understand isn't just about what they felt. It's about what you felt too, but never fully acknowledged. Pause here for a second. Have you ever noticed how you sense things before they happened? Not clearly, not logically, but somewhere deep inside, there was always a quiet awareness. A knowing that didn't need proof. A feeling that didn't need explanation. Back then, you might have questioned it. You might have told yourself it was nothing. But now, it's returning with clarity. And it's asking you to look again. Because the truth is, the connection between you was never one-sided. It was never incomplete. It was simply unspoken on both sides. That's what makes this realization so powerful. It wasn't just them holding back. It was both of you standing at the edge of something real, and not stepping forward at the same time. Not because you didn't want to, but because neither of you fully understood what you were feeling. And when two people feel something deep, but don't have the words or timing to express it, that energy doesn't disappear. It lingers. It waits. It finds its moment. And now, that moment is beginning to form. You may start to feel it more intensely now. A pull that feels familiar, yet stronger than before. A calm that feels deeper, yet carries something beneath it. A sense that something is about to become clear, even if you can't fully describe it yet. Don't ignore that feeling. Don't rush past it. Because this is the space where everything starts to align. And here's something most people never realize. When unspoken emotions begin to surface after time has passed, they don't come back the same way they were. They return, clearer, stronger, more honest. Because time removes confusion. Time removes fear. Time reveals what was always true, without the noise that once surrounded it. That's what's happening now. Not just for you, but for them too. Somewhere, in their own space, in their own silence, they've started to feel it as well. That same reflection. That same quiet realization. That same understanding that something meaningful was left incomplete. And when two people begin to reach that awareness at the same time, something shifts. Not instantly. Not visibly. But deeply. Like two paths slowly finding their way back toward the same point. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to force it. Because what is real doesn't need pressure to exist. It only needs recognition. And that recognition is beginning now. You might even start noticing something unexpected. You're not holding on to the past the same way anymore. You're not replaying things with confusion. You're seeing them with clarity. With calm. With a sense that everything had a reason. Even if it wasn't clear back then. That's growth. But more than that. That's alignment. Because when you stop resisting what was, you create space for what's meant to be understood. And in that space, something new begins to rise. Not a repeat of the past, but a deeper version of it. A version where nothing needs to be hidden. Nothing needs to be guessed. Nothing needs to remain unfinished. But here's the part that will catch you off guard. The truth that's coming forward isn't just about feelings. It's about timing. Because sometimes, two people are meant for each other. But not at the moment they first meet. Sometimes, the connection is real from the beginning. But the understanding takes time to catch up. And when it finally does, everything starts to make sense in a way it never did before. That's where you are now. Standing at the edge of a realization that's bigger than the past. Bigger than the silence. Bigger than what was left unsaid. And just when it feels like you're about to fully understand it, something shifts again. Something unexpected. Because this time, it's not just a feeling returning. It's something more direct. More real. More undeniable. And when it arrives, you won't need to question it. You won't need to analyze it. You'll simply know. But until that moment, stay present with what you're feeling now. Because this quiet unfolding is leading you somewhere very specific. Somewhere that has been forming long before you realized it. And the next step is closer than you think. And just when everything feels like it's settling into quiet understanding, something stirs again. Not in your thoughts this time, but deeper. In that place where certainty doesn't need explanation. You might feel it suddenly, like a shift in the air around your awareness. A calm intensity. A stillness that feels alive. As if something that was once distant, is now moving closer. But here's what makes this moment different. You're no longer searching for answers the way you used to. You're not trying to chase meaning. You're allowing it to come to you. And that changes everything. Because what's about to become clear was never meant to be forced into your understanding. It was meant to arrive when you were ready to receive it without fear, without doubt, without resistance. Take a breath here. And notice how different this feels from before. There's no confusion pulling at you. No restless need to figure everything out immediately. Just a quiet awareness that something real is aligning. Something that doesn't need to prove itself. Something that simply is. And in this stillness, a realization begins to form. Not all at once. Not in loud, overwhelming clarity. but in gentle layers, like light slowly revealing what was always in front of you. They felt it. From the very beginning, they felt it. That connection. That depth. That quiet pull that didn't make logical sense, but felt undeniable. And you felt it too. But neither of you trusted it fully back then. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things often feel uncertain, even when they're true. So both of you paused. Not out of rejection, but out of hesitation. And now, that hesitation is dissolving. Slowly. Naturally. Without force. Because what's real doesn't disappear. It evolves. It waits. It returns in a form that can finally be understood. And that's what you're beginning to witness now. Not just a memory. Not just a feeling. But a truth that is finding its way back into your awareness, with clarity this time. You may even notice how your heart reacts differently now. There's no heaviness in it. No tension. Just a calm openness, like you're finally seeing something without the distortion of doubt. That's not accidental. That's readiness. Because understanding only becomes clear when you're no longer trying to protect yourself from it. And you've reached that point. Quietly. Naturally. Without even realizing when it happened. And now, something begins to take shape. A realization that goes beyond the past, beyond what was said or left unsaid. A realization about what this connection actually is. Not what it seemed like. Not what it looked like on the surface. But what it truly is, underneath everything. And here it is. It was never incomplete. It was simply unfolding. From the very beginning, it was moving through stages. Moments of closeness. Moments of silence. Moments of confusion. All leading to this exact point, where understanding replaces uncertainty. Where clarity replaces doubt. Where what was once hidden, becomes undeniable. But don't rush to define it yet. Because the next part of this journey is not just about realizing what it was. It's about recognizing what it is becoming. And that's where everything deepens. Because something is beginning to shift beyond just awareness. Something that doesn't stay within thoughts or memories. Something that starts to move, in real ways. You may not see it immediately. You may not hear it right away. But you will feel it. That unmistakable sense that something is changing, not just within you, but around you. As if the distance between understanding and reality is slowly closing. And when that space finally disappears, what was once unspoken won't remain silent anymore. Not in the way it used to. Because when truth reaches its moment, it finds a way to be expressed. Clearly. Naturally. Without hesitation. And that moment is closer than it has ever been. Closer than you expect. Closer than it has ever felt before. So stay here. In this calm awareness. In this quiet clarity. Because what you're experiencing right now is not the end of the realization. It's the beginning of something far more real. And what comes next won't just make sense. It will feel undeniable.